on the map. This is Ron Costa broadcasting live in the Mappable USA studios in Las Vegas, Nevada. And today, folks, everybody's talking about crowdfunding. They talk about Reg.A. They do it because they want to get on to and access the capital markets. Today, we're going to bring you a story on how to do that successfully. And in order to do that, let's bring in Vicky Hutchmawa from the World Token Market. Vicky, how are you today?
I'm doing great today, Ron. As I say every time, fabulous day in Las Vegas, so what more could we want, except it's Christmas time, and that's even better.
Yeah,
we have
absolutely.
such an exciting guest today. We're going to talk about, I can't wait. Let's get started.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're an issuer, you really want to hear this story. So,
absolutely.
Folks, let's introduce Doug Chloupek. Doug is the founder, CEO, and chairperson of Juva Life. Doug, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm amazing. Thank you so much for having me on. Appreciate the opportunity to talk with yourself and your listeners.
Absolutely, yeah. You have a great story and something that everybody wants to hear about, and a real good success Reg.A story, etc. But before we get into that, let's talk about yourself a little. Can you give us a little background on who you are and how, and even what Juva Life does?
Yeah, I'm the chief janitor. It feels like it. We do a little bit of everything. So as you mentioned, thank you for the introduction. I am the founder, CEO, and chairman of the board at Juva Life. Juva Life consists of about 7 or 8 U.S.-owned corporations. We are in the cannabis industry, but more primarily in the life science new formulation development space. So my company really takes the mission of well over a decade of my experience in building, a dozen cannabis companies here in California, and seeing the needs in the industry and what's truly missing in the industry, which is a level of science and efficacy that does not currently exist in the U.S. or global marketplace, with the exception of a very few minor companies. So we've taken the approach of raising money in the Canadian space, subsequently raising money in the U.S. space via the Reg.A process, which we'll talk about in a minute, to help fund the build-out of each of our infrastructure components for the cannabis supply chain. Those are retail stores, delivery businesses, cultivation sites, greenhouse, indoor, and manufacturing. That creates the infrastructure and the supply chain to penetrate the market, gives us our substrate base materials that we then are able to manufacture, study, and formulate out of our research facility in Hayward. And this all goes with the oversight from the Western IRB, which is Institutional Review Board, which basically allows you to monitor humans using products to assess levels of efficacy. So in short, the data that we derive from our patient-reported outcomes has the same clinical relevance as like a phase 2A or phase 2B multi-phase clinical that you'd see the pharmaceutical industry do, but it would take them typically 4 to 7 years and tens of millions of dollars to get there. And we have navigated a process that expedites that. So that's the basis of what our company really is, unlocking the science of cannabis.
Excellent. We've done a couple podcasts with companies that are also researching with cannabis in the research and development, and it's amazing what cannabis can do for people's lives that's so beneficial, and people just don't know it. So that's great that you're informing the world that there's more to cannabis than, just going wacky.
That is true. There is more than the wacky tobacco version of cannabis. The medicinal components, which we anecdotally know from 30, 40 years of using cannabis here in California, and what we've anecdotally seen, the real difference is being able to apply true science and real rigor behind unlocking the answers for the questions. Who does it work for? Why does it work for them? Can you repeat that? And how do you accurately dose that? You answer those questions, you effectively unlock the key to proprietary specialized formulations, which become precision. Precision medicine is a big thing in today's talk track for advanced medical treatment, and that's really what we're talking about, is being able to create precision formulations that have a expected, repeatable outcome and solution, and doing it in a meaningful manner that no longer applies anecdotal information, but a level of science and rigor that's applied to GMP manufacturing and pharmaceutical industry, which is really where we're gearing this company for the eventual exit and acquisition to the pharmaceutical industry.
Excellent. I was talking to a friend the other day, and I said, in all of the world, over all of the time, God gave humanity 3 gifts. He gave them bees, he gave them honey, and he gave them cannabis to help them live their life. Now we just have to unlock the secrets, and that's what you're doing. That's outstanding.
That is, and COVID, as ironic as it is, has shown that there are alternative pathways to an end. Typically, it would have taken 6 to 10 years to have developed a COVID vaccine, and now you have companies like Moderna and Pfizer that have created it in less than a year. So our company, we have the will and we have the talent, the same way that Moderna and Pfizer had the will and the talent to create a COVID vaccine. We have the will, the talent, and the financing in order to unlock the critical questions that surround cannabis. And part of that is, we have one of our newest hires, our vice president of chemistry, who was the director of oncology at Bristol Myers Squibb for the last 8 years, has left from Bristol Myers Squibb and is my vice president of chemistry, bridging the gap between my chemistry advisement board and my medical advisement board to create the formulations needed for our patent portfolio as we continue to move our company forward.
Wow. How many patents do you have?
We have no patents as of today. We are still doing some of the deep dive on the science of I don't want to get too deep into it. We're deep dive on some of the early round science that will then be utilized to validate the findings from our patient-reported outcomes. We were just approved from the Western IRB about 8 weeks ago to start onboarding our first patients. We have up to 2,000 patients will enroll into our first research registry that's gathering data on 6 specific ailments with 18 products associated with those 6 ailments, which then create the baseline for our next round of formulations. So there's a lot of behind-the-scenes planning that goes on before you actually are able to roll out something that has any level of efficacy, and we're in that phase right now.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well,
it sounds like this Juva Life, then the entity is the kind of like the top level entity then that kind of owns all your subsidies that you're talking about. Is that the way it's structured?
Correct. So we have our Canadian corporate, which is Juva Life Inc. in Canada, that owns our U.S. subsidiary, Juva Life, and we have about 7 or 8 other subsidiaries in different cities and different buildings and different phases of development and operation.
Yeah,
currently.
And what I like about what you're saying, Doug, is that it sounds like your company runs the gamut on just about every aspect of the cannabis business, from like the seeds right down to sales, and you're in the middle of everything. So so far so good. You got a nice business out there for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and that's correct. After running these businesses for over a decade independently and siloed from each other, I started this corporation knowing what the deficiencies are in the current industry model and knowing the end goal for our company, which is really unlocking the science of cannabis and those questions I previously mentioned. And one of the best ways to do that is to be able to control your supply chain. And so we control every aspect of the supply chain with decades of history and experience doing so, and are just applying another level, which allows the cannabis side to fund the company and also to fund the research, where at some point the value of the research will far surpass by orders of magnitude the cannabis value. But right now, while the research is growing, the cannabis is also growing.
So you cultivate your own cannabis, and then do you sell cannabis in dispensaries and that for the general population, using those funds to fund your research and development?
Correct. That is the business model.
Excellent.
Our cultivation facility, we've just completed our phase 2, which is we've invested almost $10 million into our cultivation facility out in the city of Stockton, which has the capability of producing about 225 pounds of cannabis every 9 days once we're fully operational.
Oh, my Lord.
So we're just waiting. It's a little about $500,000 every 9 days in production value.
Excellent.
So we're just waiting for the final state approval. We may put plants in the ground later this week. It might be in a week or 2 weeks. As soon as we get the final approval, we are full steam ahead, ready to plant our first crop.
Excellent. And then, of course, you can move to Nevada, because Nevada's hot with the cannabis as well. So, but let's discuss what we are doing our podcast on, and that's crowdfunding. And you, I believe that you were one of the very first companies to go through the Reg.A process for crowdfunding. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, it was a very interesting process. I would love to say it was an easy process, but it was not. It was definitely very labor intensive.
Well, you were working with the government, so, nothing's easy with them.
Yeah, well, and especially because we're cross-border, so it adds a whole other layer of complexity, not just doing a standard Reg.A, but being a Canadian-owned company doing a Reg.A. And there was really no roadmap when we started this. It seemed like a right opportunity. And we approached the Reg.A backwards from most. Most people now, a year and a half after we started our Reg.A, most people now see that there's been some successes. They go and start to do their formation to do a Reg.A, get the Reg.A successful, and then they have the massive issue of, how do I actually get anybody to know about my Reg.A? How do I actually get people to actually invest in my Reg.A? I did the whole process backwards. I found the publishers who were interested in our story, who liked what we had built, and who were very interested and committed to, once we had an approved Reg.A, they would cover our story. So I approached everything completely backwards, in part because it was the only thing I knew how to do at the time, and I needed to ensure that we could have a successful Reg.A. So we met with a number of publishers, and we're fortunate enough that at the time, Agora Financial, under their umbrella Palm Beach, which is one of their financial divisions, was looking to write about this new thing called Reg.A that very few people had heard about. And they were looking for, ideally, a company that dealt with cannabis or CBD or hemp at some level, and that was still private, and that had goals of going public. And they vetted about 60 or 70 companies from, I believe it was like 8 countries that they had spent searching around for the right company. And we happened to be the right company. We checked the boxes. We were still private. We had previously raised about $6 million from about 170 Canadian retail investors as our seed round. We had a solid team. We had history of success in the industry. As being a private company, we had plans to go public to create the liquidity for our investors, and we saw the opportunity via the Reg.A Plus pathway. And so we started down that pathway, which, again, was expensive and not an easy pathway. It in essence, is basically like a miniature IPO. The same filings, the same financials, the same clearances. And at that time, it was really trial and error. There was no roadmap to follow. So, when I first initiated, we didn't know that you had to use a broker-dealer for certain states. So we interviewed half dozen broker-dealers till we finally found the one that seemed to be the right broker-dealer. You have your problem states, so you have to have separate nuances for those issued problem states with the broker-dealers. You have your transfer agents, you have Canadian counsel, you have U.S. counsel, there's so many different layers of complexity that we created the roadmap and found who were the right service providers, who assisted us, who had the best rates, and subsequently put the package together. Palm Beach Financial had about 130,000 people that registered to listen to their 2-hour webinar about my company, Juva Life. Out of those 130,000 people, 5,000 of them opted to subscribe to Palm Beach's annual subscription package, which I believe was $2,500. So from a publisher standpoint, it was great. They made about $10 million off of selling our story.
Yeah.
And from our standpoint, out of those 5,000 people who purchased the subscription, which then gave them our company's information, Juva Life, this is the information about them, and this is where you go to invest. Those folks, 4,000 of them subsequently contacted us and invested with us directly, which is what led to our roughly $18 million that we brought in through our Reg.A plus financing.
Excellent. A lot of companies think of this crowdfunding process, but they don't put enough emphasis on marketing before you start the process so that by the time you go through a very expensive, time-consuming process, people already know about you so that you can have a successful crowdfunding. If you don't do the marketing beforehand, it's like you said, now you're done and now nobody knows what you're doing and nobody wants to invest because they don't know you're there. That's a very important aspect.
Yeah. No, you're 100% correct.
And then on these investments that these guys were making, was there a minimum investment that you offered?
Yeah, so our minimum investment of $2,000 was the minimum. We've seen other companies go as low as $50 and other ones as high as $5,000. We chose a $2,000 investment because we knew that these were unaccredited, typically U.S.-based investors. Most of them were investing because the information and the analyst who was recommending the investment, they trusted, which is very, very important to get traction. And their real concerns, which were very different concerns than our typical retail investors. Retail investors are looking at, a bit of what's your schedule, what's your cap table look like, how many rounds are you going to subsequently raise, what's my dilution going to look like. These were very different questions from the unaccredited U.S. investors, which were really, Tika told me I have to get in and this is a great stock and I should hold it for X period of time. Can I still invest? That was one of the biggest questions. Or how can I do an electronic wire transfer? Can you help me?
Yes.
And so we had a very large, robust investor relations team. I mean, at one point we had about 6,000 phone calls waiting for return and about 3,000 or 4,000 emails, and this all happened in a period of 72 hours.
Oh my Lord!
So there are so many nuances when doing a successful Reg.A. I mean, the simple side of the investor relations team could literally be the death of a Reg.A.
Oh, absolutely
it's
correct.
A make or break.
And when your minimum investment is $2,000, you open the window to so many people. And when you're dealing with a product that's a trending product like cannabis, you're going to, like you did, get inundated with people who want to be a part of what you're doing. And if you don't have the personnel in place to handle that volume, then they're going to go someplace else.
Correct.
Yeah,
in a heartbeat.
And Doug, did you do this raise did you set aside a separate part of your website, like an investor relations portal, or did you list this with a crowdfunding portal?
No, we built our own. We literally did everything ourselves. So we built our own investor portal. We built our own CRM to manage all the investors coming in. We built our own investor relations team. We built our own marketing around that. So we did 100% of this in-house. The only things that were outsourced were just legal counsel.
Yeah. Well, and did you find that, I mean, just from a logical point of view, I would think that the more things and the more aspects that are done in-house, the more control you have of the project, which would lead to success at the end, because you're not outsourcing to people that may drop the ball and ruin the whole package.
Yeah, correct. I mean, and we had our learning curve. So don't get me wrong. If I had to do it again, there's some things that we would probably do a little differently. But at the end of the day, we had a very successful Reg.A when very few people even heard of Reg.A back in
that's right.
Ending out Q2, Q4 of 19.
Yeah.
When we were starting, almost nobody even knew what a Reg.A was. And when we started, which was in early 2019, the whole Reg.A process. I mentioned Reg.A, and most people had never heard of it.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
What made you decide to go the Reg.A process?
Really, one of the big tipping points was I had a reverse. It's a funny, not funny story. Do you happen to recall when that U.S. college scandal was going on and all the celebrities and a bunch of rich people were getting thrown in jail for cheating to get their kids in the schools?
Yes.
So I had a company that we were originally going to do a reverse merger with in Canada, which was a very, very well-known person and company in Canada. And unfortunately, 2 days before the board vote on my side and their side to approve our reverse merger, he got caught up in that and
oh, no.
was part of this huge scandal, which was in essence a blessing in disguise, which we promptly backed out of that deal. And as we backed out of that deal, that left me sitting here saying, what do we do now? We need to quickly pivot. And so we quickly pivoted just through my investment partners that I have. We came to learn about the Reg.A process. We learned that there were some publishers looking for companies in the market, and then we put all the pieces together. We did all the due diligence. We basically had, there's no guarantees, but we had if you can put this together, we're interested in covering it. So we put it all together and subsequently got the coverage.
Excellent.
Yeah. Did you have to run your investor portal by the SEC for their approval or their qualification or something?
Many components of it, yes, all went through the FCC for many levels of approval.
Right. Okay. And then in general, if someone asked you, based on your experience, how much money it would cost to run a Reg.A from start to, let's say, finish, what would you give them a ballpark figure? What do you think is a reasonable amount of money that an issuer would spend for this process?
It really depends on kind of what the raise is that they're looking for. Are they looking to maximize $50 million? Are they looking to try and raise $10 million or $5 million? And because a lot of those pieces come in where you have a broker dealer that might take 1% of the deal, dealing with all of the problem states. You have your investor relations team that will take, certain fees or flat fees. And so at this point, there's a lot, and there's a ton of legal fees. So you could estimate anywhere between $400,000 up to $1.3 million, depending on how much is done in-house and how much is outsourced. And you could expect, depending on what size of deal you're looking at, anywhere from, up to, 6% of your raise in basically fees and, 6 to even 8-9% potentially in fees, if you lump in attorneys, transfer agents, filings, and all of those pieces. So there's
Gotcha.
a big scale, but it's not cheap.
No, it's not. And what about the timing involved in this, too? From the minute that you submit your application to the SEC or file your forms until you get approved, how long did it take you guys to do that?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question because the bulk of the work is leading up to being able to submit to the SEC. That's really the bulk of the work. So it's not hey, here's my turnkey packet, let me submit, and now I'm 6 weeks. You're looking at, at probably your fastest pace, 4.5, 5 months, and a long run, 13 months.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, I agree with that.
Really depends on how active or proactive you are. And especially with COVID now too, a lot of things are what used to be a 30-day mandatory turnaround. Now it's 45 or 60. So there's a lot of variables.
Yeah.
And that goes back to as much money as it costs and as much time and stress and effort that you're investing, that makes it even more important to make sure that you've marketed and let people know about you so when the time comes, you're right there ready to go and you don't have to say, oh, wait, now we have to do marketing after you've gone through this whole ordeal.
Correct. And luckily, it doesn't really have an effect with us because we have successfully done our Reg.A, we've closed our Reg.A, and since gone public in 3 markets. But there are companies like, Blue Rock Consulting that's out there that takes a lot of these components and puts them together in a package and can really hold the hand of new issuers and answer the questions, speak with a level of accuracy based on the history of having a number of deals go through their pipeline. So there's a lot of support that's out there now that wasn't there when we did it, but that is there that can help expedite the process for many now.
Yeah, what I love about this story is that you went Reg.A with the intent of accessing the capital markets, and now you've done that. You're listed on a number of exchanges right now. Can you tell us a little bit about how you did that? I mean, what were the steps that you need to do to get listed?
Yeah, well, that was always part of our plan. When we did our Reg.A, if I go just back historically, we raised our Series A funds, which were $6 million Canadian, at 35 cents with a 60-cent half warrant. So in U.S. dollars, that's 24 cents and 45 cents for our half warrant. When we did the Reg.A, raise at 50 cents U.S. with a 75-cent half warrant, knowing that when we go public, we were doing a non-offering prospectus. So we did not go public to raise money. We went public to create a market and create liquidity for our shareholders. And via the liquidity and the marketing associated with our IPO, the intent is that the warrant holders will exercise their warrants, de-risk part of their initial investment, and we'll bring in another $15 to $16 million in warrant funding, which is enough to get us through, knock on wood, not needing to do another round of financing. We'll be self-supportive after that.
Excellent.
Yeah, and this is new, right?
This is part of the plan.
Yeah, but this is really new. You guys just put out a press release on this very recently, didn't you?
Yes, we went public on, I think it was on the 17th. We listed in Canada on the CSE, and we listed on in the U.S. on the OTC market. Those were on the 17th, and then last week we went public in Germany on the Frankfurt Exchange.
Wow,
that's great.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's really amazing.
Yeah,
that's the way to do it.
Thank you very much.
This is the reason why people need to hear these stories, because a lot of companies want to replicate the success that you've done it in the cannabis business. You've done it from starting from scratch, all by yourself, with a team of your own during COVID. In a short period of time, relatively. So, I mean, what a story you've got. This is really a really impressive company that you've developed, Doug. I really like what you're doing.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, and appreciate the time to tell our story and continue to get the message out.
Yeah, well, I got just a few more questions before we close this out. I would imagine to go on a public exchange and a listing, there's probably a lot of legalities involved in that too. Did you use the same personnel legally for the listing that you did for the Reg.A, or did you use separate people, or are there different skill sets involved in something like that?
Yeah, no, all the same. I mean, I have teams of. It's funny. I never would have thought I'd say I have teams of attorneys in cross-border. Yeah, I have a team of attorneys in Canada and a team of U.S. counsel, and collectively between my two north and southern border counsels, we have been able to put everything together. So through my Canadian CFO, which I have my Canadian CFO, who his counterpart is Kari, who's down here in the U.S., who is my U.S. VP of Finance. The two of them, in essence, act almost as if they are both CFOs. One's in Canada, Kari's in the U.S. So I have a really good support on both sides of the border that collectively work together as a whole unit to push each of our initiatives forward.
Yeah, and Doug, if somebody is listening to this podcast and may be interested in investing or getting more information about your company, what's the best way to contact you, or what can they do?
So right now, if somebody was interested, as we are public, we don't have any rounds of financing currently open. So investing now would be through any of their normal, investment brokerage houses, TD America, E-Trade, Charles Schwab, whichever firm they might happen to use. They could go on to there and purchase our stock. In Canada, we're trading, if they happen to be Canadian, we're trading under the symbol Juva, Juva. On the OTC in the U.S., we're trading under the symbol Juva F as a foreign issuer, so JUVA F as in Frank. And I'm not sure how many users or listeners you might have in Germany, but in Germany on the Frankfurt Exchange, they use a numbering system, so we're trading under 4, the number 4, VV, like Victor.
Interesting.
Okay.
So is your stock doing well?
It's been doing pretty well. It's a little bit of a slower, I don't know if they call it a slower start, but we've started gaining some market traction. This week's been going the right direction, and we came out roughly where we thought we would. It's been holding right about what we thought it would do, and we're very excited to have a number of interviews and a number of marketers who are starting to pick up our story and starting to gain some traction. So I'm very excited what's going to happen over the next couple of months. And anyone was interested, they could go to our website, which is juvalife.com. That's JUVALIFE.com. That has all the information about Juva. And if anyone was interested, we also have our investor relations phone number there and an email form that someone could email if they had any questions or wanted any other information.
What's your stock selling at?
I just looked earlier. We were right around 80 cents. Let's see here. Let me go back to the board for today. I think we were right about 90-something in Canada. Let's double check here. Right now we're trading at 92 cents Canadian. We're up 3.5% from yesterday. On the OTC markets, we're trading at 72 cents. We came out right about 75 cents, so we're holding fairly steady.
Yeah,
and,
so far so good, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the show notes, Doug, we'll link all these so that people can just click on the link and go right to the information. So it'll be easy. If you're listening right now, you should see it on the notes for sure. But man, really, really good information. I think people really need to hear a story like this, and I'm really happy that you took the time to be on the show today and talk to our guests and just inform us that Reg.A is alive and well, crowdfunding is alive and well, and if you do it right, you can have the same success that you're experiencing right now as well. Vicki, you have any closing questions or comments before we close this out?
Well, absolutely, Ron. Doug, there's nothing that I love better than a risk taker, somebody who creates the wheel and leads the pack and shows everybody how to do something successful. And you've done this, and it's so impressive that I congratulate you for being that important risk taker who was willing to do it for the first time and show everybody, yes, you can do it. And not only that, we'll help you to do it so that you can be successful too. I think that's outstanding, and kudos to you for doing an excellent job.
Well, thank you so very much. I appreciate it. It's been a long, hard road. I couldn't have done it without the support of my amazing team that's working with me. And as always, the support of the media and interviewers and publishers like yourself creating content, helping spread the word. So appreciate you as well.
Yeah, and Doug, maybe we can get you on the show again for another podcast as news progresses in the industry and what you guys are doing as well. That would be great.
Absolutely. Sounds like a plan.
Okay. Well, thanks again for being a guest on the show. Vicki, thanks for co-hosting this episode. It was really great. Well, you're listening to the Mappable USA podcast at mappableusa.com. If you go to that website, you scroll down the page, you'll see all our syndication sources. Pick the one you like best, subscribe so you'll never miss another one of our episodes. And if you want to be a guest on the show like Doug was today, there's a guest tab there. Fill that out. We'll see what you can do about getting you on the show. If you like what you heard, send us an email, info@mappableusa.com, or just leave a comment on the page that you're listening to this on right now. So thanks for listening. Thanks for your support. And we'll be at you next week with another Mappable USA podcast. Have a great week, everyone.